Okay, the recording's on. I want to thank everybody for phoning in to this last session of the IBIU. This is the 14th and final, and it will be focusing on BIM as a service and a deliverable. Now, just a reminder to everybody that this session is approved for 1 hour of general learning units qualified under the AIA Continuing Education Program. So please keep that in mind. If you are an AIA member, please enter your AIA number in the question pane now or at any time during the broadcast. If you are a member of the AIBC, please also enter your AIBC number in the question pane. For all other registrations, you'll receive the certificate 1 or 2 days after this event, and then you can self-report as required by your organization. The material is copywritten by IBI Group. So the focus of this session will be to look how we can take BIM beyond just using it for design and looking at how we can use potentially different approaches empowered by technological differentiators to either bring unique solutions to our clients, different value either to ourselves or to our clients, or different opportunities throughout the life cycle of the project. We want to look to see what it means as an objective to understand what BIM is as a service and what that actually entails. And not to be confused with software as a service and some of the other models that are out there, but we'll talk a bit about that. What's a BIM deliverable? And this comes up a lot, and we're going to talk about that first. Identify some opportunities based on technologies that we are familiar with. So think of BIM-based additions. So what are the things we can do above and beyond what we would do to bring value to our projects? And then identify the impact to scope, schedule, and budget. One of the biggest errors is when we assume now we have a technology and therefore we have a capability, therefore it's automatically assumed into what we have to do and what we're budgeted to do. And that is certainly not the case. So as with all previous, we're going to go through the recap. So for those who have been on all the previous 13, this will be the 14th time you hear this, BIM in general, by definition, is both a noun and a verb. The verb is the real important one, the process of involving the generation and management of digital representations of physical and functional characteristics of places. It's a nice generic statement for anything you see can be BIMmed, and anything that's BIMmed has information, and it's all got to be managed. BIM's also the noun, so it's the files. Could be a 3D model, could be a 2D model, could be a 2D schematic that contain information that's networked to other information to support decision-making about the place. Software can be used by individuals, business, governments. It could be for buildings, civil, for plant. So from the I, the B, and the I perspective, for buildings, linear infrastructure, or systems. Collaboration and planning are incredibly critical to make it happen. BIM is nothing more than something plus data, and that data is really the value of what we're delivering, and that data can be scaled accordingly to accommodate the needs of the project. We often think of BIM as the assembly of the parts, so it's the whole project, and that's very valid, design into construction. But we talked a lot about in the previous instances of this IBIU is redeconstructing, if you will, to get right back down to the component parts. So the data, that information, is about what's building that overall assembly. BIM is also about the connectivity of the assets from the macro to the micro and vice versa. So the curb on the bridge in a road in a network puts the spatial or the GIS awareness of that element in its context. So if you look around wherever you're sitting today, all of the components that you can interact with, or all of the assets, if you will, are spatially tied to one another and to where they are within the globe. Using GPS positioning or just right down to its, a table in a room, on a floor, in a building, on a street. There's always the macro to micro relationship. And then there's connectivity of data throughout the life cycle of an asset. So we may model something, but we're not going to jam all possible asset information into the BIM. It's going to be leveraged and harnessed and linked to, so the model could be linked to something potentially in a schematic, in a specification, in an operation manual, or potentially even an operational screen. There are many different uses for BIM. So we talked about BIM execution plans and the definition of BIM goals and BIM uses. These are some, but not all. The orange ones would be what we typically do when we say we do BIM. When we do BIM to make us efficient during design. So if it's a design, bid, build project where we're just making our drawings and then turning over to a different contracting entity, we would most likely do those orange. You can then add in the typicals, so your clash detection, your estimating, your scheduling. Potential in the design world, it's got to be scoped and scheduled and budgeted accordingly, often more so pushed throughout the realm of construction. And then there's the other uses, the green ones around the edges. Our second session went through each and every one of these, but dwell a bit on the operations and asset management. That's where our owners are coming into the world of BIM, and they're seeing and understanding that they have this built physical form that could be modeled with hosts of asset information that then something has to happen, a renovation, an alteration, etc. There's various tools. So the biggest mistake is when people say BIM is Revit and Revit is BIM. No, BIM is BIM. And there's various types of software, either in the building, the plant, or the civil realm, all with different types of modeling applications, analytical possibilities, and exchange formats. Revit is tucked up there under building. In the world of civil, there's Civil 3D, Open Roads, and in the plant world, there's just a lot. There's a lot of different items. The trick is to ensure that you're using the building for the buildings, the vertical infrastructure, and you're using civil for civil. It seems obvious, but oftentimes you wouldn't believe how convoluted they become. And then the uniqueness of heavy industrial plants with pipe stress analysis and process instrumentation diagram linkages, that's all governed on that plant side. Once you find that right solution, package that together with your platforms, look at who we're delivering information to, who else we may, and what that exchange is, whether it's just delivery of deliverables, which we'll talk about in a bit, or if there's information exchanges, turnovers, translations, integrations into pre-existing systems, how that's all going to be done and then facilitated. And collaboration is critical, and I can't express how critical it is in the world of BIM. It's all I mentioned about bringing teams together. But when we talk specifically with design technology or BIM and CAD sharing, answer these questions. What's being shared, where, and who's going to lead it? And then we design the solution. Oftentimes we get lost on question number one. And if we can't answer these questions, collaboration will be strained and will most likely fail. So we have to be very clear and honest with what's being shared, why it's being shared, how it's going to be shared, and then the involvement of multiple offices or potentially multiple external entities. And it's those external entities that make it even more difficult. We want to plan what we're doing. So we had a session about the project BIM leadership where we talked about the BIM execution plan. There's templates that exist, North America and UK, can be informal, but you just need to be able to state, these are my goals, and this is what I'm going to do with the model to achieve those goals. And make it nice and simple like that. But the crux of it is the BIM execution plan is meant to enhance quality, not swell it, not cause it to implode, so not degrade it. That triangle is your project delivery triangle from the PMI Institute. Each one of those vertices are important, and then you don't want quality to explode or implode. BIM has to feed into that. We talked about this simple process. Oftentimes we jump to create a plan, but we don't ask, are there any owner's requirements? And then we need to assess our capabilities. So this was really governed quite nicely in the UK's British Standard 1192, talking about the EIRs and the assessment forms. North America didn't have an equivalent, but we've built something that can apply globally, removing British standard references, basically saying, does my owner need anything, and if so, what? And if nothing, great, but ask that question. And don't be afraid to ask that question. And equally, don't be afraid to assess, hey, the owner needs X. Are we able to deliver? Do we have the BIM capability, the IT resources, or just the staffing resource to deliver what's required? and then we plan accordingly. And that planning helps us, we get our LOD matrices, our collaboration workflows, process maps, all of that comes into play once we know what we're BIMing and why we're BIMing it. A couple of sessions ago, we talked about case studies, and in the world of IBI, we've got examples under buildings, infrastructure, and systems as well, where we're actually sharing data throughout the life cycle or managing data. And it's very critical. And if you see these examples here, it's not just buildings. There's buried infrastructure, and it's all about the management of that information. That's what BIM is about. Large scale, small scale. Somebody once asked, is there a threshold as to when you apply BIM? No. I showed an example of a porch project. Just a porch reno. You can do BIM as long as it's scoped, scheduled, and budgeted accordingly. And then the last time we talked about, it was the future of BIM session, and it's all about this data and how do we connect BIM and various data streams together with the overall digital economy. And that's where the world is going when we get outside of BIM authoring, which will always require advancements in standardization and further efficiencies, but we get into the world of asset management to manage inert and or active assets, analyze information that's infused by social interaction that's connected to the overall Internet of Things. Picture the day when your chairs and your tables and your switches and your lights and transit stations, your ABM systems and the banks, everything is just interconnected. All of the physical assets with the digital information network. All that data is there to come back and feed how we design, how we renovate, how we operate, and what we're actually doing with the assets that we're interacting with, and thus hopefully feed how we design them at the very beginning. Okay, so that's the 10-minute overview of where we've gone in 13 sessions. Now, let's think about why would we offer more services. There's a lot we have to do anyway as architects, engineers, planners, and then contractors and owners. But what are we doing? So think about how technology can empower possibility. And I think that's the beauty. And then the question is, if we have possibilities, how do we portray value, both to ourselves and to the clients who we want to pay for that value? So step one, remember the types of project delivery. We brought this up in the legal session. Oftentimes there's an owner. Oftentimes there's a buffer to the owner in the world of design build. And in that design build world, or P3, makes it even a little harder sometimes to get to the value of that end owner. But just the point of the slide is be mindful of who the client is. One day, the concept of integrated project delivery hopefully will take a stronger foothold in the globe, let alone in North America and Canada. But the concept that if we could all benefit from increased value, mitigated risk, there's a good place for additional services. But in the traditional models of design, bid, build, design, build, we have to just understand that value is quite subjective, depending on the designer builder, depending on the owner, depending on budgets, etc. But what we need is we need to have a plan. And again, from the first slide I said there, plan and collaborate. Important to not assume that additional services and additional deliverables have been included in your design scope. And I think that's a critical thing. Added value is something you can present to your clients and something that will vary depending on your arrangement, depending on what you're offering. So some services or deliverables may be pursued just because it might bring your self-efficiency, or it might want you to keep a positive relationship with your clients. So you might say, let's do that little bit more to make the client that little bit happier, therefore increase that much to get subsequent work. So all of that has to come into play, but again, it's about planning. Know what you're going to do, know what you're budgeted for, understand what that additional deliverable or different type of service might be so that it can be actually planned. The worst case is to just jump and do something without being cognizant of the ramifications of doing it. So just be very mindful of that as we go through these slides here. The American Institute of Certified Public Accountants provided this graphic here. They have a lot of guidance around balancing value against money, and I thought this graphic was pretty cool, where we're trying to say, no, let's do it, and the client saying, well, how much is it? And it's always hard sometimes to say, well, I can't really give you a cost because this is what we're going to try to do, therefore we don't know the actual cost, but the value is tremendous, so can you pay us? And there's that give and take. And sometimes it's a very hard situation to find that balance. But being able to portray the potential return on investment to actually pique the interest of a client is an impressive skill, and always focus on that. But again, there is a balance to convince of what we want to do, when to go off and do part of it to help with the convincing, but don't do too much so that if you don't convince, you didn't lose too much money. So, and the website of the AICPA had some real good graphics and discussions around what it means to portray value and convince. Let's talk about deliverables for a bit here. So I'm going to start with BIM CAD turnover. And a couple of things. I get asked a lot. Can we turn over our CAD and or our BIM files? Simple answer is yes. There's no rule that governs against turning over your digital media. Okay, now, should we be paid for it? Again, yes, right? Now, if it's planned for, therefore at the front end of the project, we read through the, the delivery agreement, project agreement, whatever the term is, and it specifically says we shall turn over A, B, and C at these stages of design. It's not ambiguous. We plan for it, we budget, we schedule, and therefore we're being paid for it. When it is ambiguous, that's the question. So a lot of projects deliver me CAD files, whether they're DWGs or DGNs. You deliver them. Hey, can we have the model too? Well, what do you say? Do you charge more for the model? Do you give them the model to maintain good relationship? What's the answer there? And there is no right answer. Let's be very clear on that. If you can make additional profit by turning over additional digital media, that sounds like a good business decision. But do you go to a real good client and say, hey, I can give you my BIM model, but I want to charge you more. Are you good with that? And who knows what they'll say. If we turn over BIM, will our scope increase? The answer has to be no. And managing that, especially on design, build, and P3 projects, is quite a challenge. So you're mandated to give a 2D PDF drawing. Instead, we're going to give them 3D Civil 3D files and 3D Revit models, and which they can now interact, get quantities, see what's modeled right, see what's modeled incorrectly, give us feedback based on the models, ask us to do more, etc., etc. It's very risky. But in a general premise, use of technology does not increase your scope. And it should be kept that way. We're very careful with some of the stuff that we're developing as well to make sure that that message has been explicitly made that, hey, here in IBI, we want to innovate, we want to create new possibilities. That doesn't mean now we go and design a building and those new possibilities become the status quo. And in the world of BIM, a lot, especially in the last decade and a half, you'll hear, well, you have a BIM model, you can do clash detection, you can do 4D simulation. Well, as an architect and engineer, do I have to simulate construction of the building? Probably not. Therefore, why would I be expected to do that? So always ask yourselves those questions when you see either requests or as a result of a digital turnover, you see out of scope requests. So be very, very careful with those. Now, is there a legal concern? So, expanding or thinking back to the BIM and legal seminar we had, the contract will always define the deliverables that binds the party, period. Most contracts these days will say drawings and specs, or still saying drawings and specs. Some contracts will call for other forms of digital turnover, CAD files, BIM models, etc. Now, when you're giving digital information outside of your contractual deliverables, they won't supersede your contractual deliverables. So I'm giving you a drawing, and then I give you a BIM model. Well, the drawing and the specs, that's what I'm deliverables contracted to do. But under tort law, we do have a duty of care. So if I do give you something as a licensed professional, there is that expectation that I put the proper duty to ensure that what I've turned over is of the utmost of quality and representative of what I'm saying. Therefore, we like to include the limit of liability document. And it basically restricts the use of the digital information and defines the use at your own risk for the recipient. Now, there's different forms. We have some corporate forms. The point is we just want to be diligent to say, hey, I'm giving you something that I'm not contracted to give you. Here's the limitations. That's all. That's the fundamental premise of it. We want to make sure it's done right and everything, but that's what we want to ensure our recipients understand. In the world of BIM, digital connectivity, Internet of Things, we want to move towards the era of I can give you all my digital information with limited risk because there's downstream value and just overall value for the data industry or the digital economy as a whole, but we want to be protected from that. These are all the things that we could turn over, and there's a lot here. So I've seen contracts and projects, both here in IBI and my previous employment, 2D CAD. Now be mindful of that. Automatically people assume CAD means AutoCAD. No, CAD means CAD. And it could be AutoCAD and or MicroStation. And I've seen projects that request both. I've been asked, give me your 3D BIM files, whether it was an after-the-fact request or built into the contracts. And that's usually your Autodesk and Bentley, or Bentley platforms are the ones that we've seen. So your Revit, your EcoSim, your Civil 3D, your Open Roads. Also, we've seen the Esri ArcGIS turnovers, but then there's other 3D turnovers. So object files, STL files, FBX for gaming, pulling into a VR, virtual reality. So there's different means there. They might ask for just review models. So Navisworks, Navigator, Celebri, all of those are on the table. PDFs, either in 2D or 3D format. And again, PDF is irrelevant of Acrobat versus Bluebeam, so I put them both there. It's a deliverable. Image requests, JPEG, TIFF, and who knows whatever else. Data outputs. And this one's a tough one, so I only put on there the ones I know, I guess, Excel, Access, and SQL. But data outputs could take various different formats. You could see IFCs, you could see COBE, you could see so many different types of outputs. I wanted to leave that a little more ambiguous because I'll be honest, we're not seeing as many requests for formal data turnovers as I thought we would be by this time, but I suspect that that will grow in the years to come. Usually, the form of turnover is dictated to us. Because if it's not, most likely will just be PDFs of our drawings and our specs. So usually somewhere in a contract or somewhere, there's a line item saying we want some type of format. Be mindful of that. And I'll just give one example. In the past, I had a project that said turnover MicroStation DGN, looked pretty simple, version 7. The PM didn't know, they thought whatever, it's just one of the versions. It had a significant ramification on a conversion to that format. So just be mindful. If there's something, have someone in design technology just look it over. We have a lot of requests for deliverable turnovers for visualization. So this we did for the BIM for architects. So we did have this slide on there. Now, take this with a grain of salt, right? So there's renderings, animations, virtual reality, augmented reality, and physical models. Now, depending on the type, we built this leveling structure on how to actually achieve these. Now, I've been in discussions recently saying, hey, level 5 animations with virtual reality, virtual reality, you can buy the Google goggles, or the Google goggles and Google Cardboard, and build quickly VR from your Samsung device. Cool. But then there's Microsoft HoloLens, 6,000 in apparatus, and if you can get that done right, you're not only virtual reality, but you're into the realm of augmented reality with digital interaction with the assets that we have. So there's some widespread differences there, and when we look to those higher level ones, those are the incredible differentiations that if we could grasp those, it would change the nature of what could be delivered and the whole nature of actually interacting with our designs as well. So there's a lot of exciting stuff hopefully going into 2017 and beyond. But with that said, visualization is a great example of scope creep often, because if it's not required in the contract, then the question is, well, we want to do it often for better communication, understanding of materiality, spatial arrangement, etc. How much do you do? How do you do it? How do you budget for it? Can you get the client to pay for it? We can probably portray the value to the client. Would they want to pay for it? Do we do it just to maintain relationships? All of those questions as a project manager will keep coming into play, and they're all valid questions, and they should be answered before we actually proceed. This here, and I hope the video is showing well, and I apologize if it's choppy, but my recording will have it. This is what we call a 360 animation. So this is an interactive, so you can, hopefully you're seeing my mouse moving there. You're able to jump from one scene to another. So this is a fully rendered, a couple of fully rendered scenes in full 360, and it takes some processing time, obviously. So this is one of those things where we can offer the value to the client and say, hey, do you want something like this, and allow them to understand that this could exist, give them a potential budget to produce something in general terms, and then refine the budget as the project moves forward. But I thought that's a good example to show some of the possibilities, and you can actually use that for on your iPads as well, to just move iPads, iPhones around. Data gluing or hyperlinking is one that I wanted to also show here. This is one our Portland office does this for one of their deliverables. That's not an example. This is just showing a 3D PDF, but you can actually. So first off, the 3D PDF, export from your 3D BIM models into PDF format, lets you drive around. This is one that I worked on in my past. But then from that, you can start to hyperlink to drawings and specs and shop drawings and operations manuals for various parts of either the assets in the 3D PDF, or to hyperlink to plan sections, elevations, etc. So there is that possibility as well. Now, this is very time-consuming as a deliverable, because you can imagine not only do you have to have your arms around all the information, you got to put it all somewhere, you've got to build all the linkages, and then turn over the 3D PDF as a deliverable. So you need to scope it, schedule it, and budget that, convince the client of the value. And the value statement for the client is, well, instead of giving me stacks of paper, or instead of giving me, a bunch of PDFs, you're actually tying them all together for me. So as a client, I can actually interact with my information and understand what's referring to what in my PDF. So it's a pretty good deliverable if you can convince the client that it's of value. Okay, just doing a time check. All right, let's talk about some services now. And again, like the deliverables, you won't do all of these on every project, but knowing that they exist will open some possibilities. So the first service, and this is an internal service, and I wanted to harp on this a little bit, is Project BIM leadership. It's a critical role required on every single project. And I'm going to stress that. So if you look around and you're saying, well, I don't have an assigned role, somebody has to be doing some aspect of defining the need, leading, quality assuring the deliverables, or the services. Somebody has to be doing that. And if it's a formal BIM process, if it's just a 2D CAD project, if it's an urban planning project, GIS integration, whatever it is, somebody has to have had sat down and said, this is what we have to do, this is why, and this is how. That's what this is about. Now, when we're doing formal BIM, both in IBI and in the industry, it's about providing that focal point, the point of accountability, the person who's going to lead, the connection point for the rest of the project team to all things design technology. That's what this role is about. So I'm going to that's something that we can offer both internally as well as to our extended teams that involve external entities as well. So we want to make sure that we're positioning ourselves as IBI has expertise in the world BIM, overall BIM, and we're there to put that to the table. So Project BIM leadership. The other thing to understand is there is a difference when we come to it. So when asked, okay, great, Brent, we're going to do Project BIM leadership, but don't we do some of this stuff generally, and there's a difference between what we do corporately or strategically versus what we do at the project level. So when somebody says, well, somebody's buying software, Brent, I thought you guys manage our software, our education, our training, our content. We do, right? That's the corporate side. So we kind of built this chart here to delineate the differences between what we do corporately. So we don't want every project fumbling around and saying, hey, where do I buy my licenses for my software? No, we do all that. But set up a project, your clash detection, any visualization services, preparation of your plans, helping to create documents, producing your drawings or workflows for drawing production, custom content creation. So on some of our major LRT projects, instead of having everybody on the design team trying to make a widget, get one person to do it, build that content, deploy it on the project. How do we glue our teams together, all the collaboration efforts? We've got staff in multiple offers scattered across the globe and then with external entities. That's what this service is, to really bind the team together. And we went through a recent effort on, well, great, how do you plan on this, right? Again, it comes down to, do we know what the client requirements are, or are there any precedent projects? So a BIM leader for a K-12 school. Well, let's look at I need this project that had a BIM leader. What was their budget? And then let's analyze based on the client requirements. If 1 and 2 fail, what's the capital cost? Or even worse, number of sheets. And I've done that in my past where we have to just guess, say it was a 1,000-sheet project for an industrial building. Brent, what would the BIM lead be? Well, we guess, or simply just ask for guidance. I think the message here, though, is, this as a BIM service, shepherding the application of BIM is probably one of the most critical services that can be provided to any project team, spanning the I, the B, or the I, connect with global connections, external connections, or simply just in one office that just needs to make this thing go efficiently. Now, BIM support is a whole different brand of service. So this isn't to be confused with CAD help or with IT help. But oftentimes it might be sparked by our CAD help inbox. Hey, this isn't, hey, I opened up Revit and my Revit doesn't work. Well, there's probably a computer issue, a software issue. Get your Revit to open, step 1. This is more so, I've been trying to create a parametric object that sits on the face of a wall, and I want to have an equation in there that if I punch in the equation, it'll actually augment this geometry, but I just can't figure it out. Let's get some experts to assist. Or we're trying to do some mass automated routine. We're trying to use tools like generative design, algorithmic design, and we need help with programming. We need help with algorithms. We need help with equations. That's the concept here, to offer expertise to bind our teams together. Now, think outside the box, the IBI box, if you will. What about our clients? And what if they need that type? So what if they come to us and say, hey, we're trying to apply BIM to our facilities management. We're looking to model our existing assets. We just need some help. We need some guidance on how to do this. That could be the previous slide, some leadership, or we just need some support in order to develop and deliver some of our content. We have those expertise. So as a project manager or those who are servicing clients regularly, keep your eyes and ears open for that. Because if you hear that they're struggling at an implementation level from a BIM perspective, we could offer our services in a time and material basis to help shepherd them along. And the benefit there is it obviously gets us engaged with the client in a non-design situation, but the client knows our name, and then it might actually help us to achieve, potential subsequent projects with them. Lifecycle data management. So the question here is, what could we do if we're on a project, whether it's design, bid, build, or even a design build project, and our models, or so let's say the contractor or those receiving our models, don't have the expertise to further them. So this was an example taken out of Southfield where they included in their RFP an ability to do some basic services enhanced, and premium. And the idea there was, how can we help those during construction to advance our models beyond the defined LOD 300, so to get them at or close to 400, but us be the BIMers. And that's a unique proposition and something that we should think about. The project, if you will, doesn't have to end, especially in a design bid build, it doesn't have to end at the end of design. We could actually enhance our services during construction to include furtherment of the BIM model, inclusion of as-built conditions, so increasing up to LOD 400, and even just enriching the engagement between client, contractor, and designer throughout that life cycle. Keeps us there with the client, keeps us there with the contractor, and makes the models robust and rich. So that when we need to do record drawings or as-builts, the information's already there in the model to be harnessed. So that's something to keep in mind as a possibility. And I know of other situations where we proposed this and we either succeeded or failed, but at least we're there suggesting this to some of our contractor clients. Now the hard part is when they're contractor clients, so in a design build or a P3, most likely they either have this capability or they want this capability, so they don't want to give it away. But it's a good service to put out there. Now, client interactions, this is one, so from the selling IBI perspective, I look at this to say, this is where we may be at conferences, we may be just asking to get in front of a client. Give us an hour to present. So take that approach, anybody who has the ear of a client, to say, get IBI in the room, let us talk about how we do BIM. Let us talk about the potential values we can bring you, right? Help drive to them the fact that we've got skill and capability. Now, oftentimes, clients are new to BIM, and that's very true. So those who've heard about operations and asset management and have actually jumped on it, kudos to them. They send us requirements in their RFPs, and we have to reply. Other times, clients just don't know. They may have heard of BIM, but they don't know what it means. So we can get in front of them, portray them, show our capabilities, and then help them to develop their standards. I did this one for town of Innisfil in Ontario, Canada. We had 2 or 3 sessions where we portrayed what BIM meant and some approaches to workflows, software, etc. This was back in my previous employment. Then the client put out their RFP. Their RFP contained much of what we presented, and we were able to bid on that RFP with confidence because what was in there was good. We can offer education sessions, and I've done that with some clients I've interacted with at conferences. These IBIU sessions can be made available and delivered in front of those clients to help bring their awareness up. We have a service to review our contracts. Now, I can't stress how important this is. I have in here the paragraph from Eglinton ECLRT, and this is important because it takes a lot to understand. This is just one paragraph. There's a lot of pieces in this paragraph, and the effort here was to review this with the design team to make sure that there is clarity over the expectations of the contractor and the expectations of the designer, what we have to do versus what they're going to do, and how things move back and forth. So there's a lot to this, and I'm not going to go through these in any detail, but definitely be cognizant of the fact that whatever we're signing will be riddled with words, that will be riddled with potential implications, that may tie back to a whole bunch of other parts of the overall project agreement. So just be very careful of that, and somebody has to review, interpret, and ensure all is in order. And if you're not comfortable with what it means to say an electronic file, BIM files, level of development, etc., ask the question. That's what the service is here for, and oftentimes it's a very quick service. Okay, I'm going to get some cooler things now, watching the clock go by. Context capture. So in the realm of existing conditions. So if you remember in the wheel of BIM at the beginning there, existing conditions I didn't even put on there because that's a whole different beast in itself. You go up to a site, brownfield, greenfield, whatever, you need to do your work in there. Well, do you work off of surveys? Do you work off of existing drawings? Do you use technology to try to capture the information? Context capture uses photographs or videos to stitch them together to create 3D meshes upon which you can do your designs. This is out of our Edmonton office, so if you want to talk to John Byrne, he would be a great person to connect with. We have some drones out there that we've actually used to capture an existing site condition and create a 3D model. So hopefully the video showing on one side is video from the drone, on the other side is the 3D model generated from the video using photogrammetry. So be mindful that it exists. Now, whether you're using Autodesk solution, Bentley solution, doesn't really matter. The point is, take images, take videos, create 3D mesh, proceed to work. Now, that's not free, and that needs to be planned. Find out how much it costs. See if it's something the client can recuperate. Is it worth us spending the time? All of those questions you have to ask. Point clouds is another service. So point clouds does is it captures the existing conditions based on scanning equipment. It can be used for exteriors or interiors. These are some of the values that you can bring. You can actually use them pre-design for existing conditions or post-design to validate the process as it's gone through. These slides were produced by David Birch in Calgary, so if you have an opportunity or an interest, you can talk to him or myself and we can connect you accordingly. There's 3 types, terrestrial, facilities, and mobile. The mobile laser scanning, IBI actually deploys. We have a truck out in the UK for our route mapper project for Highways England. The Faro one is the one often you'll see at conferences. You put that in a room, it scans around in a circle, stitches it all together, gives you point clouds. The terrestrial is usually, as it's showing there, scanning the overall topography, building a point cloud map for you. Now this part is very critical to understand. Oftentimes, when we talk about point clouds, we hear about the failures. Well, we scanned it, it just didn't work. And that's because we scanned it, step 1. Processing and transforming wasn't accounted for, or wasn't done, which definitely won't work. But if it wasn't accounted for, then the time and the budget is completely blown to get from the point cloud scans to the BIM, CAD, or GIS. So just imagine that scanner. If you're scanning a facility and inside of a building, you might lay that down in maybe 4, 5, 6 locations, do full 360 scans, 360 in both directions, get your point clouds. Well, now they've all got to be processed together. So the actual locations of where the scans were taken, what's being scanned, has to be fully processed to give you the overall 3D placement of all the points. Once that happens, you now got to get to the BIM CAD world. So sometimes you can reference in or link in the point clouds and you model around them. Other tools or other processes or workflows would involve taking the point clouds, converting the pertinent points, if you will, into BIM geometry that you can work on. So there's a couple different approaches, and you have to understand, again, and then what you're BIMing and why you're BIMing it, so you can then understand what you're scanning and how you're going to apply the scanned output. So here are some of the results, as you can see. So you've got on the bottom left, you've got the points inside the actual Revit model. So you're comparing the Revit model against the points. You can see overall buildings. Top right, you've got the modeled building in Revit with the point cloud showing the surrounding. So I'll say there's no wrong way, if you will, as long as it's planned correctly. Envision what you're scanning. And I like the bottom right image because you can see that the point scans may not be 100% complete, and you may scan a room in 6 different locations, but if something's something's being shadowed by something else, you won't see it. So you've got to plan for that accordingly, and just work. So it's a tremendous service, but it needs to be understood and planned for. The last one with existing conditions, BIM what we have. Go to site with a laptop, a tablet, whatever, and a BIM authoring tool, that's a critical thing, and a BIM authoring tool, tape measure, and model. Doable. And that's often the question. How much does a point cloud cost? How much does flying the drone cost? How much effort will it be to go out on site and model the thing? And it usually depends on complexity of the building, things you can see versus concealed spaces you can't see, to what degree you need to have that existing condition modeled. So if I'm doing an addition to the building and I just need to have the building, maybe I'll just grab a plan, model the building, slap in the door, or whatever the connecting access is, model my addition. Am I doing extensive renovations to the inside, or I'm going to have to run pipes and ducts in a concealed suspended ceiling? That's a very different situation. So again, it's analyzing the problem statement, analyzing the cost of being either one of the three, and then go forward. And then this last one here, develop a checklist of what you need to see as a minimum. So if I'm going out there on site to take this approach, I better know exactly what's expected for me to be modeled, so then I can make sure that I can measure it, model it, and ensure that it's in the expected outcome. So BIM what we have. And I've had several clients that said, just come and BIM our building. And there's a lot of interpretation to understand what that means. Okay, we're going to now shift over to a different technology that we've built, and this will be the last part of the presentation. So we're calling it Asset Management as a Service, and we're going to just talk about what that means. So the first thing was, what are we going to make? So the idea here was, I want to have my BIM data along with my spatial data and my asset information all fused together. So this part, we're going to focus on the technology or the output that we've used to apply this. This is the trick of, this exists today, but how do we bring value? How do we portray the value to the client? How do we sell it? Who champions it? And how does it come to fruition? So that's always the challenge with all of these. But this asset management as a service. So it started with identifying internally, well, what systems do we have? And we have this MIM system, which came out of our Florida offices, stands for Maintenance Information Management System. It's a homegrown asset management system that's been deployed for the Department of Transportation in Florida as one client example. It allows you to track assets, take your inventories, build some tickets, maintenance and trouble tickets, and away we go. So we said, let's expand on this. So at 55 St. Clair, we moved into the 9th floor. So we said, let's take the design that was initially done in 2D, BIM it, and infuse it into the asset management system. So the first thing we did, we went from 2D to 3D Revit, ensuring that everything had a unique ID. That was critical. So this portion here, this was the question, what has to be BIMmed? So we looked at all of the assets that we wanted to track in our office, and it was basically all of the furniture, the workstations, telephones, lighting, everything that was being leased as an overall asset, and we made sure that it was modeled accordingly. So if you're thinking about a traditional project where we go to the client and we say, let's try to add this type of value, we'll manage your assets for you. The first question is, well, do we have a BIM model? And if we do have a BIM model, awesome. We actually had the BIM model for the outside walls and the core and everything, but the actual furniture layout was in 2D. So we had to say, okay, that could be a potential extra cost to make sure all of the assets that we're going to track are represented in some form in a model. We then export it to generic. So remember that future of BIM presentation. Get from the BIM authorship to the generic world, so then you can then connect to an asset management system. Simple, this is using the IFC file, Industry Foundation Classes, pulls out geometry plus data. You can view it in tools like Celibri, XBIM, Tekla BIM site, amongst many, many others. IFC is open source BIM. Beautiful open source, can't go wrong with that. So we have that. Then we went to our software developers and say, can we embed the BIM model into MIMS? So because it's open source, there's an open source viewer. There was some integration work to be done to build that into our asset management system, and we are now able to visualize the BIM model in the asset management system. So it allows us to query the information, so you can see the asset lists, and as you pull up each asset, it'll show you where it is in the BIM world. And when you go through that, one of the critical concepts is we're not jamming all of the asset information into the BIM. We're connecting it. So it's that concept of data gluing. Everything I need to know about the asset is an asset management system. The BIM model contains its virtual whereabouts relative to all the other assets within the model, something the asset management system did not have by default. The other benefit this brought is it allows us to access our assets from a mobile device, scan, verify, update asset information, or start maintenance tickets or trouble tickets. And trouble tickets are very important. I'm going to start the video. So again, hopefully this video comes through as I'm talking. But the concept of a trouble ticket enthused us a lot when it came to this system because it starts to engage the social interaction. So as this video is running, it's showing that, okay, first I'm going to take the asset inventory, and this is showing us all of the assets that we've designated as important within the 9th floor. I can select any record and get a visual reference of it. Along the bottom, there's a series of tabs that portray various types of asset information. Part of the test here was to actually focus on the financial side to make sure that the purchase or the price was included. The report generation, you can generate reports for single assets, you could generate reports for multiple assets, and it just comes out with a template and portrays all of the information. All of this could potentially be adjusted, customized, etc. That's always a question that gets asked. Now, down the side there allows you to modify information. So if, let's say, an asset is brought in and it's in the wrong location, the wrong financial information, that can all be changed on the fly. From a facilities perspective now, let's say you enter the system, you don't know what your asset is, you don't know its number, you just want to visualize it. This is where the BIM viewer comes into play. So you're able to now navigate the model. And this is that promise of BIM, connecting BIM to lifecycle asset management operations. So I can take what was built in design, enhanced and verified in preparation for this system, and now have the ability to see, well, where am I on the floor plate, zoom into the assets that are around me, and I can then start to interact with the assets. So every asset I select will give me a general description of what it is, and I can cycle through different assets and see the different descriptions. If I selected the wall that doesn't have any information, it would just show as blank. And when I hit View the Details, it will once again zoom into that asset for me, show me where it is. I can generate reports and connect to the information. And again, the beauty of this is all IBI homegrown. This has been developed internally from an asset management perspective and internally from a model development. Trouble tickets. This is now the social interaction. I'm using an asset and something is not working. What do? Email facilities, I guess. With a system like this, I can now I can enter in the ticket and I can add the relevant asset that is broken, and I can just search and filter by my assets, enter the information I need, and save the ticket. Now that ticket is assigned to that specific asset, and it will show up in any queries for the assets. Also, we can assign tickets to specific users to rectify, so assign them as a task requiring some type of rectification, and that can be, again, managed and understood relative to who's assigned, when it's completed, etc. And lastly, the reports. Once I have all of this information, I can start to query various types of reports, whether it's an asset list, list of trouble tickets, end of lease dates, end of warranty dates, you name it. So this one's looking at the trouble ticket report, showing all of that, all trouble tickets submitted in a certain date range, and it will then generate the report for me. So a comment to keep in everybody's mind when you think of this, the value is in the information or the data, not the model, not the the built form at the end of the day. What keeps us with our clients is this potential ability to glue and stream this information together and to further connect the information to the social whereabouts of the things that we are designing. This is a huge, huge possibility looking forward. I'll just go to the next video here, much shorter ones. This is the mobile app. So because of this now, again, me, the user, I can walk around. This is just searching the app. So I have connectivity to the app. I can see it on my phone. I can get a list of assets, and away I go. So this is just searching by asset category, and it lets me filter through the various categories. And if I drill down to any one, I would actually see the information. I can view maintenance tickets. I can view trouble tickets. Speaking of trouble tickets, I can actually instigate one, so I don't need to be near my computer to actually do this. So I'm standing at the microwave, and the microwave isn't working. Well, I'll just come in here. I can enter in a quick tip, select the microwave that's not working, and save it. And again, social information. Seems simple to what's wrong with it to an extent, but once I track this as an owner, I can say, hey, microwave of this manufacturer is starting to break all over 3 of my buildings. Maybe I should spec a different microwave, change them all altogether. Maybe it'll have an effect on my operating expenses going into the next year. There may be replacements, etc. So it all starts to feed into this data that an owner can harness in order to do something. Lastly, scanning an asset, I can go to the barcode scan, and I just go towards any QR code that we internally have. You just print out a QR code, attach them to the asset, and it brings you immediately to the asset record in the asset management system. So again, powerful technology, not for everything. And I think that's a very critical piece. You can see here I can get all those modify commands, edit assets, edit conditions, etc., that I would in the web-based app. And anything I enter here will be viewable on the web by anybody else. So it's all part of one constant overall system. So just to close, connectivity. It's all about the data. The value is in the data. Autodesk at their most recent AU event talked about the site of the future, and I thought this was pretty cool. Connecting, and I keep saying connect insights, deliveries, assets, and teams. It's all about connection of data. And you have physical activities that used to be dispersed and disconnected. Now the focus is how to build and enrich the synergy. And I think that's what's very important to keep in mind. Every time I show Autodesk, I want to show Bentley as well. They're all about the architecture, engineering, construction, operation, information management. So again, it's about connecting the various streams, dynamic feedback, no severing of data. That's the critical thing. Everything stays together. So our asset management system that we've built, when you look at that and you think, okay, I can have a synergy of information from BIM and design through construction, continual updating of an IFC file, linked to an asset management system, which in it itself will grow and enrich as the asset data becomes known, becomes aware, and becomes integrated into the overall offering, whilst in parallel absorbing in user-based feedback, ticketing, and trouble tickets, potentially springboarding us to the next level of what we presented at the future of BIM, cognitive BIM, adaptive assets. If all the data is there, can the assets become sentient to the extent that they become collaborators with the users and therefore adapt to what the users potentially will want them to do? And that's where we'll be one day. With that, thank you all for all of those who have attended even just one of these sessions. I hope you found them enriching, and we'll see where they bring us in the future. And with that, let me pop open the question pane here. So again, AIA numbers, AIBC numbers, please put them in the question pane if you haven't already. And if you have a question, please throw it in now. What experience, expertise does IBI have in generative design? Yes, good question. We are growing that. So I'll say we just finished a BIM task force. And in that task force, the focus was, what do we have from a generative design perspective? And I was amazed. We do have some pockets of expertise that have either dabbled with it or have a pretty good understanding of it. So the output of that task force was, as IBI as a whole, we need to be very clear on how we would use tools like Dynamo inside Revit, what benefit it'll bring, how to control the use and govern the use. And I think governance is the most important, because if we don't govern it, I can build a routine, hit a button, and completely destroy a BIM model. And I want to make it sound catastrophic because it really could be that catastrophic. So we just want to be careful with that. To my understanding, we give unique identifiers to all items in BIM model and populate the information in MIMS. Are we able to push and update an updated model to the software without losing the data we've already entered? Yes. So what MIMS does right now is it reads the GUID from the IFC file, which is unchanged in the Revit model. So as we keep updating the IFC file, we just replug that into the MIMS, and anything that was already existing would be there. Any new assets would have to be accounted for. And I'm not sure with deleted assets yet. Deleted assets we would mark as retired. Now the trick, the big trick, and this is not with just Revit, this is with anything BIM. If we're going through this process, that's why we'd want it to be planned, because the minute you press delete, so there's a chair in my model, I'm going to delete it and put in a new chair. I now have a new GUID. So in the world of asset management, I now have a retired asset and a new asset. When in reality, I may have wanted to change it from a mesh chair to a hardback chair. So concepts of family swap, replacements, etc., are very important are very important to keep in mind if you're aware that the model is being used in a continual workflow for asset management. So definitely keep that in mind. But that was a good question. Any other questions? Can you describe what generative design is? Yeah, so a bunch of words, generative design, computational design, algorithmic design. It's basically taking a BIM model. So right now, most times we'll say a BIM model is parametric. And that means you have a wall, inside the wall is a door. You delete the wall, the door goes with it. You put the door in the wall, the door punches the hole in the wall. There's a parametric relationship. Generative, algorithmic, or computational design will say, great, I'm going to take that parametric wall-door relationship and start to add equations to control the vertices for the shape. So I may want to twist and turn the wall, a la Frank Gehry type thing. I may want to control data exchanges. I may want to control its relationship relative to something else. So I may have a collection of walls and doors, and I may say, based on certain parameters, the door has to be X, and the wall needs to be thickened, and then the wall is going to twist at a certain height. I want it to turn at a different height, and you can start to add logic via a programming geometry. And I think that's the best way to describe it. I think it was in the Future of BIM presentation. We did have a couple slides on it as well, but we can expand on that another time as needed. Any other questions or AIA numbers? Okay. Well, thank you everybody, and have a good day.